rest. I will leave the newspapers at that. Steer us back to our conversation right on time at 6:30. Allow me to reintroduce, because it's been a minute now, allow me to reintroduce my panel. And here we have Dr. Purity Ngena. She is Evidence Manager, ZZ Afrique Foundation. Let me lift that so you can see their credentials as well. Oh, there you go. We have Wande Njoya, who's joining us virtually, Associate Professor, Daystar University, and Otoa Sifuna, Education Expert, who is also joining us virtually. Karibuni sana. I'll start with Professor Njoya. What are you keenly waiting for out of the recommendations that will be made by the task force on Friday? What in particular are you keeping an ear and an eye out for?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. For me, I'm just waiting to hear whether they've diagnosed the issue with CBC. That's my keen interest, because a correct diagnosis means a correct response. So that's what I'm waiting to hear, if the task force will do that. Okay, a correct diagnosis. So you're saying CBC suffers from some ills, if I understand you correctly. Many, but also a lot of the problems come as systemic. So it's not unique to just CBC. We have major systemic problems in the way we think about education. The purpose of education, I think, is still stuck in the 1963 idea of training civil servants for government. And even though they are saying now all the fluff about people now getting skills for elsewhere, I think the logic is still the same. And that's why it is very government-centric and has a lot of bureaucracy in it. So those are, I think, we Kenyans have avoided asking major questions about what education is for and what it should do. And unfortunately, the same problems are being perpetuated with this new system. So, you know, let's hear. We've been told CBC has left the station. So I don't know. You know, even when you have a train on a track, you just have to wait and see where it will go and how it will fare along the way. Yeah. All right. Otoa, you'll allow me to do ladies first. I know they say ladies first, but men before, but I'll stick with the ladies first bit of things. But Dr. Ngena, there were public hearings that were held, so the process was rather expedited. That's another question altogether. But did you, by chance, submit any memoranda to the task force?
Yes, as ZZ African Regional Education Learning Initiative, we submitted a lot based on evidence, whether it is about CBC, higher education. We were also interested in vocational trainings, TVET. And I'm hoping that our views will be heard, because as much as Wandia says that the train left the station, I think also as stakeholders, we have a responsibility to catch up. And I'm really waiting for Friday to see what the president and the task force will present to us, because personally, I feel like there are so many other good things about CBC, apart from the many other things that we are complaining about. If you look at the skills for, you know, education needs to give you skill for living, for learning and thriving. And sometimes I revise the education policies sometimes, or the National Education Strategic Plan, and you'll hear everyone punching in things like values and life skills, core competencies, 21st century skills, and everyone is saying how important they are. Even our constitution is live to the fact that we need values, we need ethics. If you read the SDG 4, target 4.7. So I feel like CBC bring light to all these things, so that they are not just remaining in the boardroom within the policy makers and policy documents, but even our learners are able to understand some of these issues and why they are important to the national building and the economy. And for sure, as we say that right now the world is faced with many complexity. We actually don't know what is going to happen 10 years from now, what jobs will exist. If you read people who are doing research on the world of work, they actually have not figured out what will be there. So what I know is that I'll need a youth or a child who has critical thinking, problem solving, who is good in collaboration, who is able to have self-efficacy. And these are things that for me, I've seen them live on the CBC document. And I'm hoping that also the classroom, we can move from written intentions, because we know sometimes it is nice to have a document, but then maybe what is happening in the classroom does not translate to what is on the written document. So I'm hoping that the CBC will still be with us, that yes, it has left the station, that all of us have a responsibility then to work hard to catch up and to ensure that our children in this country are moving forward, because we cannot remain where we were. You know, every person who talks about the beauty of 844 is because they don't really look into it, because like this year when the exam was done, let's go to KCSE, 60% of our learners had D+ and below. And I look back at the people we went to school with, where are they? How many of us have even the voice to say something, not even in the national TV like this one, even in our villages? Sometimes people are just lost. They so much. And of course, I understand that education should not put us in a box of me looking at employment. I should look also employing myself and even being and employing others. But what is employment per se? Because even the people we have in our homes, they need to have these skills, because you don't want to just leave somebody who cannot solve basic problems, that when you're here, they are calling you to tell you that maybe the pipe broke or something. You need someone who can think outside the box, whether it is here at Nation or anywhere. And so education, we need an education that can build such a child.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on that one, at least, it appears you and Professor Njoya agreed, Dr. because she talked about our education system, you know, being about training civil servants. And you're saying it needs to enable these children to think critically and to think outside the box. But I think where you differ is on the question of whether CBC provides that, or whether CBC is the answer to that. But before you respond to that, let's hear from Otua Sifuna, education expert. Good morning. What in particular are you keen to hear when the task force presents its report?
Yeah, good morning, Olive Barrows. I suspect my audibility is quite okay. I'm coming all the way from Kigali here in Rwanda. It's 1 hour difference. That explains the darkness that is still engulfing the country here. But I'm quite happy that today I sit with very eloquent, very knowledgeable sisters. So the fraternal presence today is quite okay. And Olive Barrows, I should also commend you very seriously. As a teacher of language, I never knew that on the other side of Kiswahili, you are very articulate and spot on. When you read out the Kiswahili version of the newspaper, I was like, is this Olive Barrows that knows only the Queen's English? And therefore, my 2 sisters, Professor and Dr. have articulated themselves very eloquently on the matters of expectations. For me, as Otua Sifuna, I'll just leverage on one thing. What is the confidence levels that we are building in our society? All along, Olive Barrows, the problem has been one. Did we onboard everybody, every stakeholder within the CBC trajectory? And the answer will be a partial response to that. For me, as a teacher, as an education stakeholder, I look at a situation where we build the confidence in the whole process. Not that we have got some dissenting voices. You know, this is a national idea. It is a national trajectory. It's a national discourse. It is a national transformation. So for us, CBC, in as much as if you ask my own honest opinion, Olive Barrows, I'll tell you that it was inevitable to have a curriculum change. The paradigm shift from a content-based to a concept-based kind of curriculum was long time overdue. So for me, and I had an opportunity to actually be invited by the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development to Naivasha to actually hold a 2-week-long panel beating and looking at the curriculum designs. And I can tell you, the documentation of the curriculum design is spot on. It is one of the best documents that one can ever have. However, the problem that Professor Wandia here and Daktari will agree with me is that as Kenyans, we are very good at formulating very nice-looking documents that we put on the shelves and they start gathering dust. That is the only problem that we have. We are not insufficient of these policy documents, the Education Acts, all the way from the 1980s, 1970s, the Ominde reports, up until where we are. All those reports were indicating that there is a gap in our education system. So for me, I just want to join my sisters to say that there is a disconnect between what we, the teachers, teach in class vis-a-vis what the 21st century market wants. Right now, I can tell you without missing a word, Olive, that if you did take a graduate, and it saddens me that every year the universities in Kenya are churning out many, many graduates. If you took a graduate either from Nairobi University or from Kenyatta University, where I was some years back, and you say that the Nation Media Group wants somebody with technical skills that maybe will help in fixing one or two or coming up with a certain innovation that will transform the media industry, you will be surprised that we are churning out much more theoretical half-baked graduates that lack the much needed technical skills. And I'm telling you correctly, because the other day I wanted somebody to do electrical fixing in my small premise somewhere. And Olive Barrows, it took me a long, long time to get somebody who will do the hands-on job. But all of us really want to graduate, and I'm not negating the work of Professor Wandia here. We are producing much more papers. When somebody walks along Moy Avenue with an academic angle of inclination, saying that he has a double master in physics, he is a PhD holder, but all this is relegated to the theoretical confines of what the universities are doing. So even Professor Wandia, you are not off the hook. What are you even doing at the universities? And I'll come much later to that. The problem with our education system was one, were we producing the best 21st job market graduates? And the answer is no. And therefore, I will end this introduction by quoting that if we continue teaching the historical methods of teaching that we did 10, 20, 30 years ago with yellow notes, I wonder if Professor Wandia still has the yellow notes. Then we are denying the opportunity to these young ones to be innovative and apply their skills in a very competitive, ever-changing world. Right. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for that contribution. When we come back from this break, because we need to take a break, I'll give Associate Professor Daystar University, Wandia Njoya, opportunity for, or rather a right of reply to this half-baked graduates comment that has been made by Otoa Sifuna. Do you agree? Can we put the touch screen on so that I can just remind everybody what our Twitter handles are? Share your thoughts. We are very interested in having, in hearing what your opinions are. Let me just tap the screen. Here we go. Which way forward on CBC for junior secondary students forward on CBC and for junior secondary school students at WM Njoya, at Purity Ngina, double A at the end, at Otoa Sifuna. Mine is at O Barrows. I'm clicking my notifications. I am waiting for your comments. And when Otoa was speaking about a disconnect between what happens, between what the document aspires to and what is actually happening on the ground, ground ni different. I remember I saw, was it a video that was shared of kids being taught how to swim on soil? We continue the conversation on the other side.
something, and then we won't talk about this again.
Were you able to find my dad?
Nicole. Do you realize that your daughter has lived 9 years of her life without ever knowing her father simply because you thought it didn't matter to him?
Look, I didn't ask for your opinion, Mickey. I know that I did something wrong, and you know how much this hurts me. I hold the pan, you buffoon. And I'm going to make sure that you wear it as a hat for being such a crafty liar.
It had to be you.
Go is about thriving, reaching for the stars. It's about exploring new ideas, securely and safely, from the palm of your hands. It's go time with M-Pesa Go.
Do you know why they call me sugar? It's because I bring the flavor, the heat, the spice, and the vibes on Kenyan radio. When a song plays on my show, it moves from being a hot song to a hit to a classic. When I interview you, you become a household name. And for every brand that advertises on this show, they move from being a brand to the brand. If you want to be seen, felt, and heard, you know where to be. This is the place every Monday to Friday on 96.3 Nation FM. It's the Nation FM Drive with yours truly, Anto, Neo, Soul. So kiss, mwah! Every other frequency, goodbye, and keep it right here, 96.3 Nation FM, where good music lives.
On my dark marks, I've tried everything from A to Z, even vitamin C, but hardly any results. Nivea Lumina 630 works from day one, with visible results in just 2 weeks and 71% dark marks reduction in 12. Join the 1 million women already using the #1 Lumina 630 from Nivea.
We know your flavor, and that's how you inspire us to always deliver the best quality meals made fresh with locally sourced ingredients. Galitos, bold African flavor.
Get the Galitos Hot Box and a 500 ml Coke soda at just 699 Kenya shillings.
Welcome back to AM Live. With me in studio, we have Dr. Preeti Ngina, Evidence Manager, ZZ Africa Foundation. We also have Wandia Njoya, Associate Professor, Daystar University, and Otoa Sifuna, Education Expert. The two of them are joining us virtually. That is Professor Wandia and Otoa Sifuna, who's joining us from Rwanda. Prof, what do you make of the statement by Otoa that we are churning out half-baked graduates? He's put you on the spot there.
All right. Oh, I don't even know where to start. What Mwalimu Sifuna is talking about is theory. Ironically, he's talking about theory and not the reality. The reality is that when you put a 23-year-old in a workplace, they're still young. It doesn't matter how many machines you have put them at before. They're still young. They have to acclimatize and they have to get used to the workplace. We have this myth in Kenya, again, another theory, that people can be work ready in up. When they land at the workplace, they know everything on day one. There is no such thing. Even Jesus took 3 years before he could start preaching, and he had another 30 years of working as a carpenter. There is nobody who starts working knowing everything. So this promise that we are going to have a curriculum that can make people work ready, I think we are not very serious. It's not possible, and I think educationists are talking up there and they're not really grappling with who we are as human beings and how the workplace is. Even that idea of 21st century skills, we are still the same human beings, and the workplace has not really changed. In fact, what has happened is that the workers' conditions have changed. And we can see this all around the world, where people are struggling because they are not getting paid enough to eat and to take their children to school and do all the other things. So the problem hasn't been with workers. In fact, productivity, if you look at the statistics, productivity has increased, but the salaries have not. Those are the issues that people are grappling with. So when we are being told 21st century whatever, it's the employers who have to change in the way they look at workers, the way they exploit them, exploit their work and not pay them. That's where the issue is. The issue has never been with people not working. And then even look at our graduates. We are exporting graduates, unfortunately. We are exporting them overseas to go and work elsewhere. If 844 was so bad, how come these people are able to go and work elsewhere and excel? We have Kenyans excelling in very many places, and they were graduates of 844. So what we are being promised, and in fact, for me, that has been my issue with CBC. I've been saying, okay, you justify CBC, but don't give us talking points that are not true. The things we say about work-ready graduates is not true. 21st century skills, there's nothing like that. And even the way the justification using human capital theory, that if we educate, we will grow the economy. That idea about education was dropped in the 90s by the same World Bank that is pushing CBC on us. Now, more people are talking about the development of the human being, the flourishing of the human being, the rights of children to education. That's where we are. That's where we have been since the 1990s. So that's what I'm saying. We seem to be stuck in the 1960s, even with the reasons we are using to justify CBC. And I have always said, just give me a convincing case when you're justifying this program. But to use old talking points and then tell me that this thing is new, I don't believe it.
All right, Dr. Ngina?
Interesting that a professor would see 21st century skills as not important, because research have been done and many employers...
I don't think she's arguing that 21st century skills are not important. I think she's arguing that, perhaps it's a false promise where the CBC is concerned.
I think when we start with the 21st century skills, because I think most of the other things, she might be right. Okay. But on 21st century skills, research has been done, and many employers keep on saying that if you come to this station, I can build you. I can give you the technical that is missing. Maybe in the university, you didn't have all these gadgets. What I cannot train you is how to be a problem solver. You have to think for yourself. I can teach you how to be compassionate, how to be empathetic. The same way she's saying that we need to teach people to be human. If you're talking about children's rights, how do I get to know how to treat the other human being as a human being? Education has to facilitate that, right? And for me, I look at CBC. If you look at junior secondary, there has this curriculum of community service learning, which is very important because we need to teach our children to be selfless, to see other human beings as human beings. But in the process, as they do that, they are gaining other important competencies. The university umbrella in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania did a research in 2014, and the findings were that 53% of our graduates, this is done by university, not researchers from outside field, that 53% of our graduates don't have the skills needed in the market. These are studies done by people in the university. So what is the problem? Is the problem lack of resources in those universities to give the practical, what is needed? Or is it the way we approach education? Because I am a trained teacher, and when I was studying to be a teacher, I was trained more on mathematics and more on chemistry. What I didn't get is how to teach mathematics and how to teach chemistry. So send me to high school, I have the maths, but how to deliver it in a way that is child-centered, because I know I was taught don't be teacher-centered, child-centered pedagogical approaches, but then I was only having one semester, one course on teaching methods. So for university to be sincere, there must be something, especially in the Department of Education, because if they are receiving, the university, like professor, is going to receive children who have gone through so many years of training. And what we know is that if you want to change the brain, you change the children when they are quite young. So by the time they are 20, when they are getting to the university, it becomes very difficult. It's like rewiring a node house. Definitely, it will take a lot of time for people to change how they saw things being done, how you want them to start thinking and all that. And so there should be a way the university train teachers in a different way to approach their pedagogical approaches, whether it is university, teacher training colleges. If we have to move from the documents, as she's saying, the CBC document, to something that is more realistic, the document will be there, but then the person implementing, the person who is going to nurture, to develop some of these skills, has not been probably well trained. And I think that we must point it out, that the teacher training colleges has a big responsibility. Even the university have a big responsibility. And I said we have to relook at what work we are talking about. So if you say that people are going outside, which is very nice, what about the ones that have been are in our villages, the ones that are helping us in our farms? Because most of us are farmers, whether you're farming a small farm or a big farm. You need them to have the skills needed. And work is work. For me, I feel like sometimes when we talk about work, we are only looking at one that you get paid by someone else, or you get to be known because you're dressing nicely. Sometimes I'm having a conversation with someone who works in a OLX, that company, and he said that the people who transport those things, delivery people, they get more than 60,000 a month. And I'm looking at some people who have good jobs, good jobs in our own way of thinking, they get less than that. So we need to really relook at what work are we talking about. And for me, education has to build someone who is able to thrive. And if education doesn't do that, then we are missing the point. Can we justify that 844 was good? I think many children, we lost many of our colleagues, most of our friends, they are still back somewhere with no direction. And I said 60% of the people got a D+ and below. I'm not saying that all of those people didn't get somewhere. I don't know where they have gone. Studies need to be done to see whether if you churn out and 60% get a D+ and below, where do they go? Do they become better, or is their life done? And if that is the case, then which is this curriculum that can help everybody to move forward? But if you look at, I was looking and conversing with teachers about these exams that have just been done by the grade 6. One of the things I agree is that sometimes we have very nice documents, but then it doesn't translate to what the intention, the bigger picture was. Because we are talking about competence-based curriculum, right? But the exams that they were given was objective, multiple choices. But all along, children have been trained on structured way of thinking, open-ended. They were to think for themselves. And only at this year, mid-year, the teachers were told now the exams that is going to come will be ABCD, and you need to train the learners how to respond to this question. What does that take away from the learner? I understand the government or the people who made that were looking at the marking. But then if you look at the child who have been trained on how to think outside the box, how to play with answers, how not to, any answer is a right answer and it is correct because you can exceed, you can meet expectation and all that. But now you're putting them to pick only one out of the 4 choices. It means you are limiting their capability to think. And I think consistency is very important from what was the idea that we needed to build children who are able to think outside the box. But then when you go again, because what we know is that exam, assessment, dictate instruction. Every teacher now is going to look at that grade 6 paper. And to be sincere, next year, many teachers are going to change the way they approach education, the way they approach any content, because they are always guided. And what question was asked? How was it? You do analysis. A study done in 2017 pointed out that most of the exam questions end up being repeated and maybe not word to word. but you can tell that the question 1 of maths will be logarithm, or if you are in primary, it will be numbers. So you're able to understand how the exam is structured. And then, as a teacher, you just need to support your learners to align to that. And so if the exams, then it is this objective, of course I question why they call it objective when it is ABCD, and you had trained your children to think, then you see there's no correlation. So at that point, I agree that there are some things about CBC we must point out that are not really right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Sifuna, I'll bring you in at this point. Professor Njoya responded to you. She said what you're speaking is theory, and it's unfair to claim that we're churning out half-baked graduates, that actually productivity has increased, but not commensurate to the salaries.
Yeah, I think listening, first of all, to my sister Purity, I become very excited to hear those practical sentiments. But for the first time, I've had quite a lot of interactions and shows with my good Professor Njoya. But she now, this morning, she seems to suffer from that detachment from reality. And I have respected her for all these years as an academician. The universities, to me, I call them synonymous to factories. They must produce practical skills, Olive, whether you like it or not. I did say and quote an old expression that resonates very well with my thinking, that if we continue teaching these young people with the skills, the approach, the pedagogy that we used 10 years, 20 years back, we deny them the opportunity to face tomorrow. I can tell you very eloquently, Olive, that even 844, which I am a product of it, like she rightfully puts it, was not about curriculum. But over the years, it lost what we call credibility and its importance. It continued to be mutilated. I remember I did technical subjects such as agriculture, art and design, social ethics, social education and ethics. It reached at a point, Olive, you ask the whereabouts of those practical and value-based subjects, where they disappeared to, and somebody could not account for that. So to me, last week I was reading a social media trend that really went a lot, that Kenyans, we are very good at putting English as a compulsory subject in our curriculum and agriculture as optional, so that people now pride themselves in speaking good English, but they are starving. Right now, the government is calling every Kenyan to contribute so that we can buy food for our starving brothers and sisters. But we are speaking very good English. The reason English is compulsory, agriculture is optional. Professor Njoya, my good sister, we cannot go on, we could not have gone on with such a curriculum that is so disjointed, that lacks the reality of what life is all about. And I agree with Purity. When Purity says that we need to train for efficacy, to train for productivity. Any government worth its salt puts an emphasis on the quality, access and quality of education. In Kiswahili that you articulated very well, Olive, it's called elimu bora, sio bora elimu. So when we got to a point and realized that our graduates from all the way from primary to the universities were actually missing it out, then we had to go to the drawing board and ask ourselves, what can we do to the curriculum? The problem, first of all, and I will shock you guys, that this was not a conversation that was just in Kenya alone. You will come to realize that this was a global paradigm shift, that many countries had realized that change is inevitable. There is something, a principle in my area of teaching called exploration in time and space. So many things have changed. The work space has changed. The operationalization has changed. So in that case, our young boys and girls must be rewired Olive Barrows, you went to school, and you can remember with nostalgia your science subject. You could name the parts. You are given a tree, and the first question, name the parts of a plant. And Olive Barrow, with your ruler, you annotated very well and say, these are the branches, this is the trunk, this is the roots. Then the second question they asked you, what is the process of plants making their food? And you wrote photosynthesis. You got a very big tick. And the teacher said, very, very intelligent girl. And you graduated. Was that the kind of education you wanted? When somebody somewhere else was looking at the medicinal value of that particular plant. So that up now, when we say that we were at the same GDP with Korea, Singapore, and Malaysia at the same time, and now they are miles and miles away, then we start saying, where did the rain start beating us? And we come to the square where Professor Njoya sits, and we start telling them, and I'm not exonerating myself from the blame, Professor Njoya, my good professor, because I am also in to be blamed. How have we been teaching? When I look at the curriculum, I look at it at the three levels: the written curriculum, the taught curriculum, and the assessed curriculum. What are we? And the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development under Dr. Omonda have done a very good job. They have presented a document. It might have flaws, it might have, the process might be a little bit sketchy here and there, but as a government, as the citizens of Kenya, we must now squarely look at CBC journey, and I liked it when you say the train left the station, but we also need to look at the passengers in that particular train, and look at where the problems that could bedevil CBC is, and really constructively look at solutions rather than being antagonistic. I like it that the Dr. Ruto government is doing one or two things that really makes me very happy. The fact that a president can go to Kibra and oversee an examination is good philosophy, is good intention. The fact that a whole government can actually go and look at the credibility and professionalization of the exam, that is good. Can we look forward to Friday when the working party gives the reports to the president? And I really pray that they will not kill the baby, that the baby shall survive. And in this case, I refer to the baby as the CBC, that we shall look at what are the threats, what are the weaknesses, and panel beats. When you go to Kariako, people actually panel beat any damaged vessel or item, and it comes out clean. We did a good job as teachers. We were on stakeholders. We looked at the curriculum designing. And three things that Purity has said here, Olive Barrow, that were so close to CBC, and I said, if this goes all its way to fruition, I'll be the most happy teacher. One was key pertinent issues. It's called contemporary pertinent issues. Are we? Can
I ask you to hold on there, because you're moving us forward. I'd like to give Professor Njoya an opportunity to to respond. But I'll make a note of three pertinent issues, and we can pick it up from there. But Professor Njoya, you spoke about one of the issues you have with the education system is, you said, government-centric. So what would be your proposal where this is concerned?
It's the design of CBC, so there's nothing that can be done about that. Because, and this I said, I've been saying this for the last 4 years. One of the problems with CBC is that because they are already approaching it from, oh, you teachers are a problem, which you can hear I'm being told, we have to monitor you. So there's more resources and more time being spent on monitoring teachers, while in the public, people are coming and telling us, oh, now the teacher is free, and now the teacher is what? That is not the reality qua ground. Qua ground, teachers are filling in forms. Every month they have to go and log into the TSC portal and send reports. When you look at those tests, I'm telling you, the tests which you people are celebrating with the success cards and nice Facebook posts, for the teacher, they have to grade 60 students on 7 skills. And then you have to fill in all those. So there's so much more work for the teacher, and nobody wants to talk about that. We just want to hear flowers, how this thing is from, I don't know where, it has worked where, but it is more work for the teachers. That's the reality. And then these criticisms that we've been given, I thought we had finished this story about exams and 844 being too exam-centered. Because the problem of exams is an economic problem. It is not a curriculum problem. The reason why 844 had to be narrowed and narrowed is because more people were coming into the system and there were no jobs. The economy was not growing. And why doesn't our economy grow? Because again, it is engineered by government people. There's so much bureaucracy, and the wealth, the people who own the most wealth are not, they're not industrialists, they're not inventors, they're just people who amass property. What that means is that a lot of money is stuck and frozen instead of circulating in the economy. So what happens? People become more desperate for papers because they think papers will improve their chances of getting doing well in life. That is why exams became more cutthroat. People became more interested in how people did in the school system. And it is not because of the curriculum, it's because of opportunities. So for us to be told that a curriculum is going to solve problems which came from the economy is we are not being fair to Kenyans, and we are not being historically or sociologically correct. Basically, the diagnosis these colleagues of mine have given me is completely wrong. It is stuck in the human capital theory that we have to train people for the economy to do well. Kenyans are creative. What they need is opportunities outside the system. And that's what they don't have, although now we are getting the launch of one of them today. But the issue was the economy. It has always been the economy, and educators have been flattering themselves that we can tinker around with what we teach in the classroom so that people can now do well in the economy. We are not that important. As we're just teaching thinking and literacy and whatever, the creativity Kenyans do, they do it outside when they get beyond the school. And that has been the problem with this conversation about CBC. It's based on old narratives that have nothing to do with the 21st century in whose name they keep talking about. So the diagnosis is wrong. And then also we are being told that people can be taught values and empathy in a classroom. Are we serious? Those are things people learn from relating with one another. How many opportunities do people have to get out of the classroom, out of being boxed, and to meet people, hear histories, tour? Do we have a good transport system? Do we have green spaces? Are we encouraging the arts? Those are where those skills come from. I'm telling you, teachers, we need to stop thinking we are God. We cannot solve a lot of the problems, and our job is to be us in the classroom with the children and with our students, telling them this is where the issues are. When you go out there, you be good Kenyans, good citizens, and demand that these things be done in the larger society. But to come and tell us that, oh, we can change everything from a curriculum, we're not being serious.
All right. She's reminded me of when you graduate, they tell you now you have the power to read. All right. Let me look at some of the responses that have come in. I see here Reki, he says, it is the best curriculum, but I don't see how our government is prepared. All the burden lies on the parents and guardian, noting how the economy is. Professor Njoya has sought to debunk this. She says the teachers are also doing quite a lot. And then he continues to say, I beg your pardon, let me go back. He continues to say, it is time for the government to invest more on this Kazi, the World Cup, and less important travels. So he says we need to look at our priorities. If I understand him correctly, I'm scrolling down here, I see Samuel Wanyoike, who says, I stand to be corrected. I'm in engineering, and for sure over 70% of graduates don't have the basics. So he appears to be of the same mind as Otoa. Let us see, this is Aladdin, Admiral KE. He says, at least some medical fields have internship period before work, up to a year's long period. So Professor Andrea spoke about some of these skills you have to pick up from the workplace. You cannot be plug and play. I think, let me see what else we have here. We have Dina, who says, let me zoom in. Dina Ayoma, who says, I agree with Professor Njoya. The other male panelist is not objective at all. He's even deviating from the discussion to thank the president for supervising the exam. She's asking, has he tried engaging parents and teachers? All right. Let me see if there are any others which have come in. I'll leave it at that. But I hear you laughing, Otoa.
Yeah. Wechuli, she's called Wechuli.
Yes.
Has really hit me below the belt. But I agree. I agree with her antagonism. I'm actually complimenting Dr. William Ruto for the job well done. You know, our president is a national symbol. Our president is the lover of kids. Every child, and especially the school-going children. And I remember during my time, Olive Barrows, when President Moi could pass by or come over, we could line up and sing very good songs for him. And to me, I want to salute the Kenya Kwanza government. Yeah, the fact that they came out from their offices to go and really be on the front line and ensure that there is credibility. I have said this time without number, that sometimes in Kenya, we put politics as a bottleneck to some of the service delivery components in our country. And many people will say, oh, Professor Magoha was like a double-edged sword. Professor Magoha, in his tenure, tried to instill the integrity of the exams. And therefore, when Professor Magoha was going away, my prayer was that the new government will pick from where that bar was placed, just to ensure that we do not have the shenanigans that we could hear before, where exams were stolen right, left, center. And that goes even in the CBC philosophy of thinking. How do we put values as a component to our society? The other day, Olive Barrows, I will tell you a joke, because I'm a storyteller sometimes. And a machine that could catch thieves was invented in New York. And in New York, after 1 minute being placed in the heart of New York town, it captured only 3 people who have stolen, or people with lack of integrity. The machine was quickly moved to Nigeria, I think in a town in Abuja. And after 1 hour only, it had captured over 5,000 Nigerians who were involved in matters of integrity. The story goes on and says that the machine was placed in GPO in Nairobi. And after only 5 seconds, the machine had been stolen. So that kind of small story tells you one thing. What is the integrity of our society? And when you look at the curriculum keenly, we said that we have taught the head for way so long. And Professor Njoya, you'll agree with me, that we have taught the head for way so long. But we have not realized that this Kenyan child has also a heart to be taught and also has a hands to be taught. So I want to salute again Dr. William Ruto as our president. I know he is very passionate about TVET. And TVET is going to solve the problem that we are grappling with here that Professor Njoya does not want to admit. There is a disconnect with the kind of skills that we require in our country. And when people talk of Juakali or informal sector, and they want to demonize it because what the likes of Professor Njoya are churning out are what we call the white collar, people who don't want to get dirty. I talked about agriculture, and when I talk to my students, how many of you want to venture into agriculture? The hands are zero. Because of the old thinking mentality that agriculture belongs to the caveman, to their parents, and the old order.
Okay.
We need a paradigm shift, Professor Njoya, to also make this agriculture a modern thinking, to introduce entrepreneurship. And I agree with you, Professor Njoya. We are not, I'm one teacher who doesn't tell my students that I'm teaching you to get a job. In fact, if there's any Kenyan teacher who tells a student that work so hard so that you graduate and get a white-collar job, that teacher needs not to be in class.
All right.
We want to empower our boys and girls to be innovators, to be critical thinkers, to be resilient. And those are the kind of soft skills that the nation media wants. Those are the kind of soft skills that Safaricom wants. That is the kind of soft skills that even countries such as Kigali here, and you're talking about brain drain. Brain drain is good. It shows that the quality of education in one's country is good. That's why the graduates are being poached. So to me, I have got no problem with brain drain. So Professor Njoya, let's smell the coffee and admit that our education system needed a paradigm shift. Let's support the CBC. Let's panel beat, bring out what was the threats, but most importantly, admit that we must join the global community. The global community is saying that we cannot teach naming parts of a frog when other countries are doing much more experiential learning. When you talk about examination, purity, and you are saying that as a government, we are putting emphasis on summative, we are getting it wrong from there. And when we went to Naivasha, we told the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, but most importantly, Kenya National Examination Council, that it is time to depart from summative assessment. Realize the most crucial component of formative assessment. Can you give like even close to 70% formatives and 30% summative? It defeats logic that after 8 years of being somebody in primary school, or 6 years, you wake up one morning, you are feeling a terrible migraine, you are judged by a paper, a 1 hour or 40-minute paper that is now going to demarcate the success or failure of your life. Or God forbid, you wake up and you have lost one of your very important person, but you're going to be judged by that particular paper. It saddens me as Otoa Sifuna that we have not realized that assessment. And I talked about 3 components of the curriculum.
I'm so sorry. Otoa, I know I promised you. You'll still get to talk about these 3 pertinent issues. But we do have to take a break. On the other side, we'll hear from Professor Njoya. I'm curious to get her take on this. How much of an overhaul can we realistically expect? Because this is an exercise that was undertaken, that has been undertaken for the last 3 months, September, October, November. So how, realistically speaking, really, how much of an overhaul can we expect, or to use the phrasing of Otoa, panel beating, can we realistically expect? And then Dr. Ngena, you could also tell us on the question of TVETs. You said you have submitted memoranda on the question of TVETs. If you don't mind sharing what some of your proposals were. And I see here a tweet from Wilberforce at Point Willie. He says, impeccable, Professor Wandia Njoya can never be a remedy. CBC, I beg your pardon. Impeccable, Professor. Oh, it's Professor Njoya who's been told impeccable. CBC can never be a remedy to incompetent graduates being produced in the job market. He says, let's stop using the old archaic ways to view this new education system. CBC will not solve problems. The 3 of you appear to disagree on the question of can you teach things like compassion, empathy, integrity? And there was that hypothetical that was given of a machine being stolen in 5 seconds at GPO. Is it realistic, really, to expect a curriculum to fix that? We take a break. We'll be back with more.
New Nivea Radiant and Beauty Advanced Care. With 5 oils and 5 vitamins. 48-hour nourishment. Helps reduce appearance of stretch marks in just 2 weeks. New Nivea Radiant and Beauty Advanced Care. For your shade of beautiful.
Up to 60 million shillings worth of prizes to be won, with daily and weekly cash prizes to be won by over 3 million Kenyans. Watch, create, upload. Buy a daily YouTube bundle or create a YouTube short with the hashtag shorter is better and stand a chance to win. Dial *544# to get your 1 GB bundle for just 10 shillings.
What I'm about to do, I'm sure nobody expected.
I want to give them an experience that they will never forget. Every performer has 40 hours of rehearsal booked.
With a band?
Yeah.
I mean, niko worried. Siwezi takiko kama ile kitu kama Fire Festival.
Na kuna ngoma mpya zinakam before Soul Fest.
Like, Soul Fest lakini itahitaji faster changeover.
An artist's worst nightmare, you know, it happened.
We're really in the business of selling emotions, it seems.
Hata sikujua kama kulikuwa na kitu kama hiyo ati kuna bo.
Wameanza kutupa mavitu sasa, hii ni scary mazee.
Finally everything is sorted out.
I need you to do something. The police went to my office today. They want a copy of my company's CCTV footage. Find out what's in it, and then send me a copy.
What exactly are you looking for, sir?
Just do whatever I asked you to do.
All right, sir. How could you do that to Mom? Huh? You killed her just like that so easily? What kind of person are you?
Forever, my love.
Africa is a continent that has contributed very little to the global warming problem, yet suffers some of its worst impacts. As a storyteller, I see firsthand this impact of climate change. I see it in the faces of the people whose stories I tell. I hear it in their voices. I see the despair and desperation in their eyes. This is why talking about climate change is something we must all do. I, Zainab Wandati, will be participating in the Kusi Ideas Festival 2022. See you then.
We know your flavor, and that's how you inspire us to always deliver the best quality meals made fresh with locally sourced ingredients. Galitos, bold African flavor.
Get the Galitos Hot Box and a 500 ml Coke soda at just 699 Kenya shillings.
All right, you're watching AM Live this morning. Some more feedback has come in. This is Hussein Muslim, PhD. And Otoa, is this a case of plagiarism or simply of great minds think alike? He says, I said it here, and what he's referring to is a tweet from November the 18th, where he said English is compulsory in our education curriculum whilst agriculture is optional. That's why we speak good English, yet no more no food for most of us. So it appears you're of a similar mind with Hussein Otoa. And then I see here Luyard, who says this is a type of logic that the good professor is referring to. The issue of graduates lacking competitive skills is a scapegoat used by the government to mask the bad economy and employers who refuse to provide the necessary training to their employees. Dr. Ngena, you had made some recommendations where TVET, if I had you correctly at the start, where TVET is concerned. As Zizi, as Big Coalition, so we came together because for us we have this regional education learning initiative that has over 70 organizations that are all thinking about education. And you look at TVET, they are part of TVET that are devolved. You know, some belong to the county government and others to the national government. I think one of the things is we need enough funding, especially for the village polytechnics, or what they call VTCs. You know, they need to be given more resources because they actually get the children at the lowest of the pyramid. You know, if you want to have the youth from these people who are really struggling below average families, they go to those vocational colleges. Some are faith-based, and you see the government only support those that are you get placed through the CUSP. And so the others don't get any funding from the government. The other thing is that the government has promised to build vocational colleges in the constituencies. If you read the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto, they promised to build vocational colleges in areas where they were remaining, I think, about 50 or so. The question is, are they needed in those places? First, we need to do an analysis of where those that are there, whether they have enough youth, or we can send more there and now boost in terms of giving more resources to that. Of course, there have been change in terms of the examination, which is good. I think now that streamlining of who examine what and who does what within the government is a welcome move. But also, when you think of whole youth development, so when an employer, and I'll go back to this question of values and life skills, when employers say that they are looking for youth with a soft skill, because they know that when you come to your workplace, you'll not find what you probably went to school to do, because things are changing. Maybe you are trained as an electrician, but now we have new technology, and they would want to train you a bit on that. But what they can't do is, for sure, this soft skill, or what people call transferable skills. And I think then, if you read the National Strategic Plan, they have said they are going to do it. But is it happening? What works in building these competencies? I totally agree with Prof that it is very difficult to use a blackboard and a chalk to train someone how to be empathetic. But there are countries who have figured out, like I was reading a country like Armenia, they started implementing chess as a compulsory subject to all the children so that they can get some of these cognitive skills and they can be able to relate with others as they build, as they play with their colleagues. In Kenya, of course, we have talked about you know, community service learning, where children then are able to get to learn through giving and having conversations. One of the things I know that we don't understand is about what are these values in life. Sometimes you hear people in very senior positions in this country talking about cooking as a life skill, or swimming as a life skill, which is not. You know, it is a skill. If you cook and become a chef, then it becomes your technical skill or a professional skill. But as you cook, what are you learning? You see parents only sending photos because you have been told, send a photo of your child cooking. They never had any conversation. The parent finished to cook and called the daughter, you come, the teacher wanted a photo. There was no conversation. Because for me, I believe that when you're doing these authentic activities or these activities, you need to have a conversation, so you're building communication skill, you're sharing with your child, and not just the importance of having a very nice meal. Or when you're teaching learners how to swim, you are maybe teaching them resilience. No one will interview you. If I come for an interview here, I'm sure you'll not ask me whether I'm a good chef or am I a good swimmer. Those one, maybe as a hobby, I can put them in my CV, but they'll not come to the interview, you know, panel. You'll ask me about my leadership skill. How did I solve problems if I was faced by any? And from what I've seen, and we have done a research that pointed out that only 6% of our adolescents 13 to 17 in this country have problem-solving skills. Because what we think is that you have faced with a problem, you solve it.
And problem solving has a very logical process. You cannot just decide, have a problem and this is how I'm solving it. If you look at what the government has done, they realize CBC has a problem. They didn't just give us a solution. They brought people together to first understand the problem. We have many people talking about it. We have given our insight to it. We have had teachers, even children, giving their insight to this task force. And through this, they have now understood what the problem is. I'm hoping so. And they have recommendations. And probably they'll even give the president the best out of the many recommendations they have had. Because when you are giving the memoranda, you needed to point out the problem, use evidence to support what you are thinking, and give your final recommendation. So out of this, they are going to give us a solution. You can see this is, you have a very logical, a very laid down process. It's not like you wake up, there's a problem, you start solving it. You really need to understand the problem. And if our children are not able to get this cognitive process, then there is no way they can be ready for 21st century world. A study done in 2019, I think by the women researchers, I have read that report. It said that they visited 447, something like that, classroom, and observed lessons. And in all those classrooms, only in 2 where learners asked questions without being prompted. The other time is only when the teacher asked the learner, what is the response? What is the answer to this? This is the only time the children were able to maybe be curious, to think outside the box, and to ask, Mwalim, what did you say that was? So if you analyze the findings, rather than just looking at only 2, what is missing? It means the classroom environment is not structured in a way that it favors the development of these core competencies. That maybe the learners are still, the teacher has the monopoly of knowledge, which is what CBC needed to address. It needed to unmute the classroom. The learners were supposed to be engaged to develop their own learning experiences. Because in future, most of these things that we used to ask our children, even what we went through, you can get them through Google. You need someone now who is able to get out of that. One person said, I don't know whether he's called Oldov, said that the illiterate of the 21st century are those who will not be able to learn and relearn. And that is the thing, that if I'm a trained teacher, my work now is on research, I need to transfer the knowledge I gained, yes, but I need to learn new things. Who gave me the skills to do that? It is a struggle. You're trying to navigate this world because no one prepared you for that. You are prepared. When you finish school, you are a trained teacher of maths and chemistry. You push on, whether you do your PhD, you teach, right? But then if you start thinking outside the box, it takes you a lot of time. Can you imagine someone prepared me that Purity, you know what? You can be anything. They trained me on what self-efficacy is because it is part of the CBC, kujiamini. I didn't have that. It is with time that you keep on learning. You hear women are doing better. You start looking up to them as your role model. Then with time, you figure out that. But this is the only curriculum now that is going to prepare my son, that is going to help me as a parent think. Because, when it is something in the curriculum, you're also thinking, you mean I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to help. Professors put it rightly that many Kenyans are creative outside the education, the workplace. Can you imagine if all of us then were given an opportunity to even learn how to be creative? Because there are things that you can use in the classroom that will open up the mind of the learner or the mind of our children. And neuroscientists have said that between 0 to around 10 years, those are the times the brain can be rewired and wired, and you can change many things. But after that, most of us, if you try to change who you are, it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of resources will be spent. So I think we have somewhere to start, but we have a long way to go. And I think I'm calling upon every stakeholder so that we don't remain just saying that the train left the station. It has left the station, yes. Let us use motorbikes. If I'm in the university, I'm waiting for these learners 5-6 years from now, right? What am I doing? What is my role? Am I preparing myself? Am I reading enough? Am I accommodating different thoughts so that we don't remain where we started? 6 years, can you imagine 6 years ago, since the implementation of CBC, we are still talking about the curriculum itself rather than how can we improve it? Because I think this is the time we point out what is not working well. I've pointed out that the learners were trained on structured way of examination, of assessment, but then they were given an objective assessment. Okay. We need to point out that. Right. We need to point out that teachers don't understand this authentic activity. They are telling our children to cook, our children to do what. What are we supposed to learn? Because I don't think the end product is what matters. That I exceeded expectation because I prepared a very nice rice. Who want that? It is what was happening. Was I thinking? Were we communicating with my mother? What stories were you sharing? You know, you need to invite the learners. By then, when you are cooking, what stories were you sharing? What did you learn from your mother? And you're building their communication skill. But if you just watch the video and that's it, what is that? So we need to point out that teacher education needs to, and I don't think it's the teacher education. I think also as a country, if you're given a responsibility to nurture, to develop, to be the person who is in charge of children, 50 in a classroom, you have a responsibility to grow them. You need to think out, to read even more. You know, that skill of learning to learn, which is in the CBC, I think most of us are lacking it. You don't know, because the ability to continue learning. So we are all saying that teachers need to be taken back to the training, but they can read. The world has become very global, and I think we need to, to move forward with the curriculum, but also to point out that there are gaps that can be filled.
All right, Professor Njoya, something that Ngina has spoken about now was also raised in one of the tweets. The responsibility of parents and the cost of CBC. It's been one of the biggest criticisms. People share these messages that they've been asked to take cooking oil to school, or there was a joke that chicken, but that was on a lighter note. But there was also the question of inequality, that some of the tasks given to some of the students, let's say in Nairobi, a student will be asked to print something. So a parent says they're forced to buy a printer for the house, but what of the child in Turkana? You spoke of cooking. I mean, into somewhere like where people are facing hunger, they don't have the option. They're struggling day to day. They're dealing with insecurity. Is that one of the things, Professor Njoya, you hope this reform team will look at, the inequalities, let me just phrase it that way, that currently exist?
All right. Unfortunately, what I'm going to say, Kenyans will not understand. And this is why I keep saying that when people say that there was too much head work in 844, it is not true. It's not true. But let me just try and explain. Now, my friend Purity should go and read somebody called Michel Foucault, who has talked about governmentality. What is governmentality? Governmentality is when people with power try to re-engineer the motivations for why we do things. So what is happening with CBC? In fact, the worst part of parental involvement is not even the cost, and the cost is already bad. The worst part is the re-engineering of intimacy of the parental relationship with the child, because now we are having the government entering families and telling parents, this is how you parent. And I'm so surprised that the church, which usually goes ballistic about these things, has not even noticed anything. So we are telling people who are usually crooks, who make us fight every 5 years. These are the people who are now telling us how to raise our children. The people who steal our resources, they're the ones telling us how to raise our children. So that is the main problem with the idea of parental involvement. The idea that the values with which we teach our children can be dictated from a small entity called the government. Where does culture come in? Where does faith come in? And these are the things which actually should be informing how we raise children more than anything. We have been raising children for millennia, for as long as Africans have been on this planet. We have been raising children. Now we want to say that, oh, we didn't know anything. It's the government that is going to tell us how to raise our children. So this idea that we can re-engineer things which we used to do spontaneously amongst ourselves, that now these things are being dictated from somewhere else. That's the main problem with parental involvement. Then, of course, now the second one becomes the inequality, in fact, the inequality is linked to that problem, because what we are saying is one entity is giving instructions on how people shall parent. It is not taking care of what are the resources parents have, what is their historical knowledge, what is their cultural knowledge, what are their experiences. All these things, there's such a diversity, a rich diversity of cultural ideas which have to be passed to the next generation. And now we want to standardize that and say, now we have a curriculum, KICD is going to tell us how to raise our children. That is the problem, and that's why the curriculum, as long as it has that element, has no choice but to be unequal, because you are trying to standardize things that cannot be standardized. You are trying to reduce the complexity and the cultural diversity that is involved in raising our kids. You're trying to reduce it to one curriculum and the instructions to come from a teacher who has no emotional attachment to a child. And I'm so surprised that we don't know these things. I'm being told about 21st century knowledge, but this is what is in the research. How come we don't know what I am saying? In fact, Foucault he died many years ago, and people have been talking about the problem of re-engineering the reasons why we teach, re-engineering the reasons why we raise our children. And how can we not know, and we call ourselves educators? Then the second thing I want to say, let me explain, but again, Kenyans don't like to think. Let me explain why there seems to be a problem with the students have. Do you know, I have tried, by the way, I have tried to be relevant. I have brought speakers, new material, I use YouTube. Do you know why students don't listen? 3 things. 1, you, the parents and the media, you're telling them that education doesn't matter. So they sit in our classes thinking, what is Mwalimu telling me? And yet my mom has said, this degree doesn't matter. And in fact, students have even asked me, why are we in school? Because on one hand, I am being forced to come, but when I hear my parents talking, when I hear the media talking, they're saying there's nothing we are doing. I think we need to be consistent. If we are saying education matters, we can't be saying the school is bad. And that is what has been happening. We are saying the school system is useless, but then we want to force our kids to be in class. I think we need to think really seriously about what we are saying. The second thing is the job market. When you've told the kids that there is no job that is waiting for you, they will not listen to you in class, because they're expecting, because they're saying, what is the point? Just give me the exam, I go. And these are not things that teachers can deal with, because they're coming from outside the society. And I find it very interesting that my colleagues are justifying the new system on the basis of what employers are saying, and then telling us that we don't want children to be employed. Can you pick a side? Is this thing for employment or is it not? Pick a side, then Kenyans can decide, do I want to be employed? Then they don't have to go to school if they don't want. The third thing why the skills don't seem to be being transmitted is because Kenya punishes people for creativity. Let me tell you, any teacher who tries to do anything innovative in the class will be in problem with the headmaster, who will say that's not coming in the exam, will be the problem with the parents as well, saying that's not coming in the exam, why are you bringing these things in class? And then even when the children finish, and I have documented stories upon stories about this on social media, people's ideas are stolen, people are not paid for their ideas, and we even see, like in the tech sector, it's run by Europeans, because as soon as a young person comes up with an idea, there's a venture capitalist to come and take that idea and run with it. Or we have even seen with the case of the ventilators, we are still waiting for patenting, bureaucracy, and yet these young people invented a ventilating machine. So there are so many problems outside the education system. And I think educators, maybe you're scared of being political because you saw what happened to lecturers who said, the problem isn't in our classrooms, the problem is in society. Maybe you're scared and you don't want to talk about those things. But we are not telling Kenyans the right thing if we are telling them that all these issues can be solved between a teacher and a child. That's not correct. There are so many problems in society that we need to deal with, and the thing we need to talk about most is the economy. And the last thing I want to say, you cannot be beating teachers with sticks, talking so badly about us, and then you want us to be nice in the classroom. It's not possible. You see, there are these human things that should be common sense, and they don't seem to be common sense. If you mistreat me in the classroom, if you treat us the way you treated the way KICD treated teachers and said they're not going to answer our questions, shut up, they indicted people. If you treat teachers like that, surely, do you want them to do a better job in the classroom? I think we've lost, as educators, we've lost our sense of what it means to be human. We think that we can mistreat adults and then the adults can be angels in the classroom. That cannot happen. We cannot, everything we see in the classroom is a reflection of what is in society, and we Kenyans need to be the grown-ups, and we need to deal with those problems in society so that our classrooms can be a reflection of a better society that we are sorting out in the public sphere. Please, we cannot teach heaven when we are living in hell. It cannot happen.
Okay, thank you, Professor Njoya. She said lastly, and I'm told I only have 3 minutes to go before I need to wind up. So, Professor Njoya, let me say thank you for your contributions this morning. I want to give Otwa, Otwa, can you do in 2 minutes those three pertinent issues?
Oh, okay. Very well. Thank you. Thank you. And I want to reiterate that the discourse we've had with my sisters here, the two of them have been quite fruitful. I like the school of thoughts that Professor Njoya has articulated. Professor Njoya, I think, to me, as Otoa Sifuna, I think we can deliberately build in these values, these key competences, and other good aspects of the curriculum. Yes, we are in hell, but we can form a trajectory and journey towards heaven if we so wished as a society. Number one, Olive Barrows, when I did attend the KICD, and Professor Njoya, let's give the devil its due. KICD has done its role, even with the limited resources. Professor Njoya, you sit in a vantage position to realize that a lot of these programs are donor funded. We grapple with the, let's face the reality, we grapple with the issues finances. So when KICD gets a donor like the World Bank and utilizes the limited resources they have, to me, they should be given credit for piloting, training teachers and all that. So we cannot demonize them. Number two, parental involvement, Olive Barrows. To me, as Otoa Sifuna, I believe that a learning component has three aspects. It has a school, it has a family, and it has the community. So really, sincerely speaking, the Kenyan parent has a noble duty, not to teach matters cognitive, because I'm not envisaging a situation where she has to teach physics. No, let her, Professor Njoya, we are engaging a paradigm shift where teachers, and in this case, we are also dragging in parents. They are not to teach cognitive element. They are supposed to be facilitators. It's called a sage of the stage, and bring in what we call autonomy, experiential learning, self-exploration. And when students actually learn by self-discovery, we even solve the problems of teacher-pupil ratio that has bedeviled our country. I speak this with lots of passion because I think any education system, Olive Barrows, must guarantee access in terms of cost. We give a very strong recommendation that where a computer is needed, there can be a replacement or an option of using clay.
Otoa.
Where a chicken is needed, a frog can be used.
Otoa,
as to mitigate the question of cost. I know time is not on our side.
Yes, I hate to rush you,
yes.
but yes, I'm already on borrowed time. Your third issue?
Okay. My third issue is about employment that Professor was saying. Yes, we might not guarantee them jobs. We might not say that we are teaching you, but there are no jobs. But can we make them? Olive Barrows, have you ever asked the question why many of these millennials or the Generation Z, when they get a job, they quit maybe after 1 month or 3 months? The rate at turnover in most companies is too high because of the soft skills. They have no resilience, they cannot be persistent and all that.
All right,
Finally,
I'll have to tell you what our candidates are being told as they write their papers.
Yes.
They're being told time up. So time up. I'll also give you an exam, Dr. Ngina, and I'm really sorry to do this, but we will have this conversation on another day. But Dr. Ngina, if I can give you a CBC exam on concise delivery of summation in 30 seconds, if you could.
Research is telling us that the soft skill, or what we call the core competencies, are important, and this is coming even from the employers. Research is telling us that we released recently that our learners our youth don't have these competencies. We need an education that can nurture and develop life skills and values, and CBC to me seems to be offering that solution. Thank you.
Excellent. What was the grading again?
I got an A, I think.
Oh, you did. All right, so quickly, Shukri here says, I once worked with a 21-year-old graduate who was a manager at a large retail outlet in the UK. This is a myth and is the reason we are lagging behind developed nations. So he's responding to Professor Njoya, who says these are 23-year-olds, they're still young. No one starts working knowing everything. We have here now Joseph Gitao, who says, if this is the rationale behind CBC, we're in deep trouble. One, children are chattel, capital assets for the market. Learning is hence geared towards this one goal, preparing a human resource product. That Sifuna can see what is wrong with this premise. This premise is surprising. Let us see. Last one. Sultan says, and youth are ashamed going to the farm. All want to stay in the cities and towns, leaving the lands bare back home. And then we say there's not enough food production. The old in the country can't produce enough for the whole country. That's it for AM Live. Thank you for joining us. We have had Associate Professor, Daystar University, Professor Wandia Njoya, Associate Professor, Daystar University, Wandia Njoya. We've also had Dr. Purity Ngina, and we've had Otoa Sifuna, who's joined us from Rwanda, education expert. Dr. Ngina is the evidence manager, Zizi Afrik Foundation. Good morning, your world. Winnie is here, coming up next.